Good morning. Welcome back, guys. About 3 minutes, we'll get things underway. So just for now, setting up the stream. Hope you guys have had a good couple of days since Monday. And just sit tight and we'll be good to go in just a few. Good morning, everyone. Hey, Cordy, how's it going? Good to see you. Good morning, Kylie. Welcome back. Just another minute or so. Got a little coffee today. Hey, Sebastian. I'm a big fan of iced coffee. I don't know. I always drink it iced rather than hot. I guess maybe if I lived in a really cold climate, then yeah, during the winter I might want a hot drink, but I don't know, not as refreshing to me. Good to see you guys. Hi, Sebastian, Kylie, Cordy. Yeah, you know, I also I live next door to a really good Vietnamese iced coffee place called Taste, I think. I forget, but anyway, it's very good. Yeah. Hi, Angel. Good to see you too. Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Olga, Sydney, everybody here. Appreciate your attendance. Okay, guys, so it's 10 a.m. now. Therefore, I'm going to let us get started. Welcome back, and good to see you guys. So this week, what we've done is we started in on a new topic in the class. We are moving into the realm of ethics, and so we're starting to learn about one of the major ethical theories that exists in the West. So just a little bit of background and review from last lecture. Ethics is the theoretical study of morality and moral concepts. So moral concepts include topics like right and wrong, good and bad, moral and immoral, just and unjust, virtue and vice, how you should act versus how you should not act. So whenever you're judging an action, practice, institution in either of those different ways, then you're engaged in moral judgment and moral reasoning. Human beings, of course, have a highly specialized and complex system where we do hold people and one another accountable for our communal moral standards. So we want to kind of get to the bottom of what is the nature of morality and what qualifies an action as good or bad. We went from there to discuss how there are three major types of action in ethics: morally impermissible, morally permissible, and morally obligatory. Morally impermissible actions are those that are morally wrong. They're not okay to do. Like, there's a lot of examples of things like that, but murder, theft, etc. would be clear examples. Then you've got morally permissible actions, and those are actions that are not wrong to do, and they are okay. So, it includes all kinds of stuff, like, for example, attending a lecture, taking a walk, and it also includes more noble and helpful things that benefit others, like donating time or money to a worthy cause. But it's not limited to that kind of stuff. So morally permissible. And then you've got morally obligatory actions, which are things that you must do. and it would be wrong not to do them. So there you got to think about, I don't know, like if a person has to take care of a child who they have custody over, or paying for a service that's already been rendered to you, or keeping a promise or vow that you've made. So different cases of kinds of actions that fit those moral categories. Now, the first big ethical theory that we're studying, which is going to try and tell us what makes an action permissible, impermissible, or obligatory, is the theory of utilitarianism from John Stuart Mill. So we were just starting to learn a little bit about his theory of ethics. Utilitarianism says that the morally correct action, the right action, is whichever action among your alternatives that would generate the most overall happiness or pleasure for all. And this theory is backed by what's called the greatest happiness principle, which merely says that actions are right to the extent that they promote happiness, and actions are wrong to the extent that they promote the reverse of happiness. Now, as utilitarians understand the word happiness, it's equivalent to pleasure and the absence of pain. And the reverse of happiness is pain and the absence of pleasure. So the greatest happiness principle is just saying that when you take actions, if they produce more happiness rather than less, then they're better than they otherwise would have been. And when they produce pain or take happiness away, then depending on how much of it that they do, that's worse and worse. So the next point, I guess, that we were all going to try and get into has to do with the graph that you see displayed here on the board. So as we were ending the meeting, I told you all that I would try and show you how the theory could actually be applied to a choice situation in a practical scenario. And so this is the scenario given for us to think about. It's a pizza topping selection situation. And you guys helped me at the end last time come up with 4 different possible pizza toppings. So here's a box which has 4 vertical columns and 4 horizontal rows. That forms a grid of 16 boxes. Assigned labels to the 4 vertical columns are 4 types of pizza. So you've got barbecue chicken, that's BBQC if you can't read it very good, okay? Then the second column, C for cheese, the third column, P for pepperoni, and then the fourth column is S, standing for sausage. So 4 possible options, let's suppose, of pizza toppings. And then here are 4 members of the class, 4 students. Hopefully all of them are here. If not, no worries, we'll just substitute someone in, but we got Brandon, Zoe, Nigel, and Sydney. So now, looking at the graph, we see that each box in the grid connects a name with a particular pizza topping selection. So like, for example, this would be Zoe cheese. This would be this box, Nigel pepperoni. In each of the boxes, what we're going to do is place a number, and it's going to be a number in a range from 0 to 50. And this number is going to stand for the quantity of pleasure that you think you would get if that was the pizza topping. Sorry. Thanks. I'm one of those people I can never just sneeze once. So anyways, 3. Yeah, so the number is going to be between 0 and 50, and it's going to stand for the total amount of happiness or pleasure that that individual would derive from that selection of pizza topping. Okay, so for the 4 people whose names are on the board, just kind of be ready to answer my question about what your rating of the 4 pizzas would be. Now, I know some may say, isn't it a little bit artificial to try and assign precise numeric values to how much pleasure we get from something? Like, what's the difference between a pleasure score of 35 and 34? Okay, well, it might be hard to precisely determine how to correspond the number of pleasure units to actually how you feel. But these numbers are given just so that we have a sense of greater than and less than. Like, so if you find one thing more pleasing than another, the number you give should reflect that. So if you like one more than the other, then it should have a higher number. Okay, 50 representing maxed out most pleasure, and 0 representing just none at all. Okay, so Brandon, let's start with you. Is Brandon here? Let me know. Brandon, I think I see you. Does it add up to 50 in total, or is it each out of 50 independently? Yeah, Zoe, it does not add up to 50 in total. It's just 4 different numbers in each box, and it's a number between 0 and 50. So no, they don't add up to 50, but 0 to 50 is the range of values I'm giving you just as a stipulation, so that it's not just a 0 through an indefinite number, okay? So Brandon, okay, good. Let me know then, BBQC, C, P, and S, what are the 4 numbers that you would give for those 4 possibilities? That's up to you. You're the only one who knows how you feel about these 4 toppings. So just share, if you wouldn't mind, what are the ratings, pleasure score, etc., of the 4. Okay, so here we go. I'm seeing your numbers: 40, 35, 45, 20. Okay, so this is just Brandon's view, but I guess for you, if you're the one that was just choosing, you like barbecue chicken quite a bit. I can see that. Cheese is like a little bit of less pleasure, but it's still up there, above average, I guess. But for you, I guess pepperoni is superior to barbecue chicken. You like that even a little more, and then sausage for you is like your least favorite of these 4. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. So next we got Zoe. Zoe, I see you here. So just let us know now, what would be the 4 numbers given in your case? You know, barbecue chicken, cheese, pepperoni, and sausage. Okay, Zoe, you say 10, 40, 45, 45. So, okay, interesting. 10, 40, and then 45, 45. So I guess from your perspective, Zoe, these both are enjoyable, and there's no preference there. For you, it's like you have no dominant preference between these two. You like them equally, and they're sort of tied for first. If you had to go for a number 2 choice, it'd be cheese, and then for you, barbecue chicken is just not a very good type of pizza. Okay, Nigel, you're next up. What do you think? We have 4 different possible options. How would you rate them in terms of how much pleasure you think you'd get if we're talking about numbers 0 through 50? So here we go, Nigel. What's your numbers? Don't think too hard, but let me know. Okay, good, Nigel. 45, 15, and then you say 45, 10. Okay, cool. So I guess you're another person who really is a little indecisive between 2 options. You like them equally as much. So barbecue chicken and pepperoni, you're indifferent, but you like them both. And then cheese is a big step down, and sausage even more so. Okay, good. And then finally we get to Sydney. Help us out, Sydney, with your choices here, or preferences rather. Degree of pleasure, whatever you want to call it. 4 things, 4 values. And so you'll let us know what you think, Sydney. Let's see. What is it? Okay, good, Sydney. So barbecue chicken, wow. A strong view. It's not good. Cheese, though, you're a huge fan of cheese. You like it a lot. Pepperoni, subtle, odd number here of 9. Not so much pleasure. And then sausage is down there also, second only to barbecue chicken in terms of your least favorite. Okay, so now we have the grid filled in. Now, let's think critically about what utilitarianism says as an ethical theory. It says your moral obligation is whatever situation you are in to take the action that would generate the most overall happiness for the greatest number of people. So now that we have all these values placed in the graph, we can determine or compute what the moral obligation is relative to this choice situation and these 4 people. So what do you think would be the very basic mathematical operation that we should do to get our answer? What's the right action? On this graph, I have to do a little bit of elementary math. What do you think is the mathematics procedure that I'm going to do to find my answer? What's the right choice here? Anybody guess that? Let's see if anyone has a guess. It's not too hard to judge. What should be my way of figuring out the right action there? Okay, so you say average, and I can see why you would maybe think that, but it's really about the total aggregate amount. So, I mean, of course, you could use an average and then multiply it by the number of people and get an aggregate. But I think it would be a little bit more straightforward to simply do addition. Then we don't have to do 2 mathematical operations, like add them all and divide them again. So let's just get the 4 totals, and then that'll give us, what? 4 sums at the bottom of each column. The sum at the bottom is going to represent what amount of things? It's going to represent the total amount of pleasure that choice would result in if it were chosen for this group, okay? So let's do some basic addition. You can double check my math, but I think it's easy enough. So here's barbecue chicken, 40, 50, 45, that's 95. Write it, thank you. Okay, Cheese, 75, 90, 140. Pepperoni, 90, 135, 144. And then we have sausage, 65, 75, 80. Okay. So now, looking at this, if you're following the theory, then I think you should be able to tell me there's a clear winner here. What's the moral? Well, I mean, there is a winner. And based on that, what do you say is the moral obligation here in terms of whoever's the decider? What's the choice that they should make in utilitarian theory anyway, and why? Let me see it. What's the answer? What's the right thing to do here? And you should be able to see it just on the board. Okay, so yes, I guess Sydney, you're saying sadly it's pepperoni. And that's correct. Why? Well, because this is the largest number. So I put a little asterisk here. Sometimes in utilitarianism, in modern discussions of the theory, there's a word that's been invented called optimific. Optimific just refers to whichever choice in your choice situation that dominates the others by having more total utility bound up with it. And so this is the optimific action here. And therefore, it is the moral obligation in order to do the right thing. And by comparison, the other three alternatives aside from it, which don't generate as much utility, even though cheese is a close runner-up, none of the other three derive just as much total pleasure as pepperoni does. So this would be the moral obligation relative to this group. Notice, is this everybody's favorite? Well, no, Sydney, I think you've made your views clear. This is not your favorite outcome because you're not a fan of pepperoni and you're a huge fan of cheese. So if you're in this group, you're not getting your most favorite outcome. But utilitarianism says that's okay because the goal is not to promote the individual's own maximized happiness, but the total amount of overall happiness for all. Now, if you're alone by yourself and your choice situation does not affect anybody else, then of course utilitarianism would say, just do whatever creates the most pleasure for you, the individual. But once your actions have impact on others, then you would have to consider how those actions would impact collective human happiness and act accordingly. So unfortunately, Sydney, I guess, is taking one for the team, as it were, in this situation. Now, I told you last time that utilitarianism is a member of a family of theories that are grouped under the larger heading of consequentialism. Consequentialist theories have this feature in common, that they say it is the consequences that matter, it's the results that determine the morality of the action. And utilitarians say that the consequences in particular that matter are those that bear on overall human happiness. But another kind of consequentialist theory is hedonism. Maybe some of you have heard the word hedonism or have a vague familiarity with it. If not, I'll just add it to your vocabulary right now. Hedonism is a different ethical theory, which is also consequentialist, but it says the only consequences that matter are your own individual happiness. So in hedonism, the right thing to do is whatever generates the most happiness for just you, the one individual. And so I guess if it was Sydney the hedonist, then she would either demand to have her preference or break away from the group. But the thing about hedonism is that it doesn't really, it doesn't seem to most analysts as a significant or serious competitor to other ethical theories, because it sounds more to most people as though it's an invitation to live a self-centered, selfish life where you just completely ignore everyone else's preferences and interests. And, ethics is supposed to be about how you should act if you're perfectly morally enlightened, not how people have a tendency to act, whether they've ever studied morality at all. And so hedonism, as much as many people actually live that way, it doesn't strike most as an invitation to really have a moral lifestyle. But anyway, I just mentioned it in passing so that you can understand that hedonism is different from utilitarianism. But it's problematic. It's very hard for anybody to engage in collective action under hedonism if people's preferences are not all in alignment, right? So like in other cases where I've presented this graph, you guys are interesting because it seems like pepperoni is almost like a consensus. 3 out of the 4 people either prefer it the most or it's tied with their favorite. But in other cases of the same kind of graph, like just to give you some reference to my other classes I've taught, the diversity of opinion is more spread out, and everyone's got a different favorite, or maybe like 2 out of the 4 people don't share that preference. Well, imagine if it's hedonism, what should these people do? Don't hang out with the other people, because then you might have to compromise, or kill the other people so that you don't have to worry about their preferences because only you matter or whatever. So hedonism, you know, a lot of people live this way, but it's not really, I think, on the same level, and it doesn't bear the same kind of intuitive plausibility as utilitarianism. Yeah, it might be hard to order one pizza in that case. Sure, Cordy. Now, let me add to the discussion of utilitarian theory just a little bit. You might be wondering, well, why is it that happiness and pleasure is this baseline for making all your moral judgments and decisions? Yeah, well, Dennis, now you can eat pizza, I guess, later for lunch. What day is it? Wednesday? Yeah, maybe it's time for me to get one too later. But anyway, I'm feeling hungry also. Here's another principle that John Stuart Mill adds to the discussion to give further support for the principle that pleasure and happiness is the thing that we should all try to maximize to the greatest amount. It's this idea that happiness or pleasure, since they're the same in this idea of utilitarianism, I'm just putting a slash. So happiness slash, wait, thank you. Happiness or pleasure is the only thing, okay, now this is Mill talking, is the only thing that we pursue as an end and not as a means. So he says this is the real reason that this theory is, you know, objectively correct, because it already speaks to the thing that we all pursue anyway. But for us to understand this principle even in more depth, we have to tunnel into these words here and figure out what do the words means and ends refer to. So let's get that on the table and understand that. Ends and means. Now, probably it's not the most everyday word that you guys are out here speaking, ends and means, but I think if I fish around a little bit and try to stimulate your own memories, that you might have at least vague sense of it. So one way to get into the terms means and ends is to think about a common saying that maybe some of you have heard before. There's a saying that goes, the ends justify the means. Well, whether or not we agree with such a thing, what could that mean? What is this statement saying, in other words? If you have any kind of guess even, or a feeling of what that might mean, then let's see in the chat. So the question right now on the table is, what is the statement the ends justify the means saying? In other words, what does that say? Or can that be explained? Can you explain the statement that the ends justify the means? Let's see if anyone can take an attempt at that. And I'll help clarify whatever comes out. So let's see. Ends justify the means, anybody? Huh? What's this mean? Okay, so Sydney, the results justify the actions. Good, that's a good starting point. Like you're saying that if there's some results that you really want and they're important enough, then they can make it okay whatever you had to do to get those results. Cordy, here's your way of saying it. Maybe the process, the means of reaching some goal is worth it because of the goals. That's also exactly correct, yeah. So I like the way both of you have contributed your thoughts on the point, and this is true. So let me just bring the comments together and kind of add a little more detail. That's right. So when a person says the ends justify the means, they're saying, in other words, that if you have a worthy enough goal that you're trying to achieve, then whatever you have to do to get there becomes justifiable or okay. Sometimes people will say these things if they had to do something a little bit morally questionable, or, you know, just questionable in general, in the pursuit of a very important goal. Like, I don't know, suppose that somebody had to you know, they had to break a loved one out of a trapped vehicle or something, and the only way they could do it is if they stole something from a person's flatbed pickup next parking spot, which could be used to break open the windows. They don't ask permission from the owner, and technically they're using that item without anyone's authorization, which in the ordinary course of things is wrong. But you might say, well, because it was so extremely important for me to save the loved one's life, that goal, the end, justified the means of taking someone's items without their permission to use them for that case. Or like even more obvious examples, someone's child is starving and someone steals a loaf of bread to feed them. they might say theft is wrong, but in this case, the end, feeding my starving child, justified the means that I had to take. Sebastian, let's see what you've put. It means the morality of the methods to achieve something are outweighed when compared to the morality of the end product. Okay, very good, and that's all on the same point that I'm mentioning here. So now, having given that little discussion, we can clearly define these terms. So now I want you to just drill into the one word within that statement, ends justify the means. What then are the ends? I think now we're in position to say it. Ends are just a fancy sounding technical word for what things? Ends are just what? You've said that if you have an important enough goal, then the process that you take to reach it is okay or worth it. So what is an end then? Just well, okay, Angel, you say the results. Basically, yes, but I would only add this. Results are sometimes just things that happen, but the end is the result that you want to happen. So it's not just the result or the outcome, it's the intended result. And so I think a more precise word for the outcome that you want to happen is like a goal. That's right, Sydney, a goal or an objective. So that's what ends are, goals and / objectives, kind of synonymous terms, but just so you understand. Okay, so that's what an end is. Now, since you know this, what are means in relation to the ends? If the end is the goal, the end result that you're striving to get to achieve, then the means by comparison to those ends are what? Means are just in general, what's the definition of means? So we know what is an end, and let's just complete that discussion with, tell me what's a means then. Seems like based on our comments, we already have a working understanding, but I want it to be clear enough that I can write that definition. So the means are, okay, Cordy, you say deliberate actions, yes, but they're actions taken to do what? Because there's lots of actions, but not every action is a means to an end, so they're the process to reach the goals. That's good, Brandon, and Cordy basically also correct. Okay, so means are just the actions or the methods that you take to achieve whatever the goals are. Okay, so good, that's right. So these are actions taken or methods used to achieve one's goals or ends. Okay, so now that we fully understand ends and means, who is the author that wrote this again? This is from John Stuart Mill and the Theory of Utilitarianism. So that's the author. Now, okay, now that we understand ends and means, we can look at this statement again and have a full understanding of it. What it's saying, in other words, is that happiness or pleasure, it's the only thing that we seek as a goal. It's the only goal. Happiness and pleasure is the only thing that you want. Everything else that you want is not the goal, but is just a means towards the real goal of happiness. So this is simply saying that the pursuit of your happiness is your only ambition and objective in life. And so if happiness or pleasure is the one and only thing that each person strives to achieve, then why wouldn't the maximization of it in general for all affected be the correct moral standard to live by? And that's why Mill places pleasure and happiness at the center of this ethical theory, because again, repeating, happiness and pleasure, he says, I don't have to tell you that that's your goal. It already is your goal, and it's everybody's goal. Since that's true, it's recognized by people as the good that we strive for. So maximizing it seems to be the right ethical thing to do. Now, if this doesn't strike you as immediately intuitive, then I'll try to make it seem a little bit more intuitive or plausible by walking you through your current situation. Okay, so right now, for example, I know you're watching a lecture on YouTube, this class lecture. So let's start with that. You must be doing this for some type of reason. Why are you doing this? Why are you watching this lecture? Like, what is the reason? What's the goal behind this? So basically, this class and your attendance right now, you're doing this as a means to something. You're watching this lecture right now as a means to some goal that you must have. So what is the goal behind you being in this lecture right now? And you don't have to, reach too far, like for the most noble or lofty goals, just something really straightforward and practical. You are here at this meeting. Why though? Like, why are you doing this? It's got to be for a reason. So what's the point? Okay, well, Sydney, you say to gain knowledge, and I do appreciate that, and that's very Noble of you, because knowledge can be an end in itself, and I think that it is. But Cordy, I think in the short term, and looking at it a little more practically, you probably are a little bit more being direct about what the real goal is for many people, So to get a good grade in the class, that's one way to put it also, Brandon. So let me start with that. You're in this meeting right now as a means towards understanding the material. And if you can understand the material, that'll help you do well in the class and get a good grade. So you attend the meetings, etc. You engage, you hear the lecture, you comment in the live stream, and you do that as a means to being fully informed of the content so that you can do well. So this attendance is a means towards your good performance in the class. But you getting a good grade in this class is not your final objective in life. You're doing that, yes, and you want a good grade, I assume, but you only want that as a means to yet a further goal. So let's take it step by step. You attend a lecture as a means to a good grade. And you want to get a good grade in the class, and why do you want that? Why do you want the good grade in this class, Brandon or Cordy? Well, Cordy, you've already kind of taken us to the next step with your previous comment, but let's kind of repeat it. Why do you want to pass a class in college? Why would you want to do that? What's the goal in mind when you try to pass classes? So you want to pass classes as a means to graduation. Okay, correct. But when you graduate, that's also not the final thing that you want in life. You just stand your graduation and you're like, oh my goodness, what do I do with myself? This was all I ever wanted. This was my only ambition. Well, I know you want to graduate. Obviously, that's why you're a student. But why do you want to graduate? I mean, graduation is a means to other things. Because graduation, Brandon, graduate school could be the next step. You want to graduate as a means to graduate school. Some people will just finish with their BA and continue their life from there. But yeah, you want to graduate and take this higher education in order to get a career or job placement, correct? So, Kylie, good. Let's start again at the beginning. You attend a class as a means to a good grade in that class. You want a good grade in that class as one part of the means towards graduation, and you want to graduate as a means towards becoming gainfully employed. But we're still not done. Why do you want to work? Do you just like labor? You're like, put me to work. I love working for people. Well, you do want a job, I understand. But why do you want to have the job? The job is just a means to what? Why does anybody want a job or career? Because to be honest with you, it'd be kind of nice to be doing nothing and just hanging out, but whatever. Why do you want a job though? I think no, but let's just make it explicit. The job is a means to something, to getting income and wealth. That's right. So money, and we're almost at the end of the line. Let's talk about money. Why do you want money? Do you just want to look at the money? Do you just want to do origami with it or put it on a mantle and frame it and just observe it? No, you want money, but you want money as a means to what? Well, purchasing power for goods and services. Dennis, I know you need money, but let's think of the literal reason why, because it's used for buying things. It's used for buying things, and it's also, financial stability. You can have it in the bank waiting to be used for the purchase of goods and services. So money is used as a means of exchange for goods and services. Why do you want to have purchasing power over goods and services and financial security? Why do you want that? Why do you want to be able to spend money on buying things, owning things, and having money in the bank? What's the reason for that? This is the last question. Dennis, you say lol. Why do you want money? Money in our society is what gives us purchasing power and gives us opportunities for a better life. Well, you're still dancing around the real point. What do you mean better life? What kind of life do you think money will give you? You say better? Focus on the theory that's being discussed here. A good life is what kind of life? A happy life, that's right. So you think the money that you could achieve through a job is going to give you the kind of purchasing power that will make you happy, right? Why else would you want money? Only because you think it makes your life happier or more pleasurable. I don't think that you would care at all about it if you thought it's going to make me miserable and upset. So in the end, everything you're doing is pursuit of your own personal happiness, right? You take classes to graduate, to get a job, to get money, to become happy in the end. I guarantee you wouldn't be doing all of these things that take so much time, effort, and tedious intellectual labor if you didn't think there was a reward waiting for you at the end that made you happy. Why else would you do it? For other people or just to keep up appearances? No, you're doing it because you believe that it leads to happiness. So looking at the structure and the architecture of your own goals in life, your goals, it seems as though you're pursuing pleasure in the end, right? And that's what this says. It says everything that you're doing in life is directed at that goal, that end. Everything else that you want is just a means to that. So whether it is you want certain relationships, or you want to have certain travel opportunities, or you want to have certain possessions that you own, or you want to own a business, or whatever, make an impact on the world. The reason that you would want to do any of these things is because it will bring happiness to you. If it didn't bring happiness to you, you would have no motivation to do them. So he says, it's not me dictating to you, go out and pursue happiness because John Stuart Mill said so. He's telling you that if you just observe your own life and everyone else's, we're already out here pursuing happiness. That's what we were already given to do. And so he's just saying if that's the overall universal goal of each person, then that should be the standard that we bring to our ethical choices. Happiness and pleasure is the good, which is demonstrated vividly by our own choices and motives. So yeah, The Pursuit of Happiness, the one that, with Will Smith. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard good things about it, so maybe I should check it out. If that's the one you're referring to, Brandon, I think. So I'll continue from here. Next, we got to talk about the objections to this theory. So the first thing in any discussion in philosophy is to present an argument and an idea, and then we have to understand the contrasts, the objections that go against it. Dennis, you say, but the definition of happiness and what people think about money is different to each individual. No, it's not. Happiness and pleasure is the same to every individual. What pleases each person is different. So let me make the point, Dennis. Not everybody finds pleasure in the same exact things. Let me give you a quick example that I was thinking of last night. I was on Instagram and I was looking at some crazy videos, like people doing like big jumps off of mountains and stuff, wearing these air suits, and then they like kind of fly through the air gliding like a flying squirrel. Okay, so I was looking at that and talking to my friend, and I was saying, you know what? People enjoy that, but to me, I would never find that pleasurable. Even if it was a total success and nothing wrong happened, I would not look back on it like, wow, that was the most fun experience or exciting thing in my life. To me, just knowing how I'm risk averse and I don't even like heights, I would just be fully traumatized and full of terror the whole way going down. I would probably have nightmares about it for the rest of my life. So for me, that whole thing is not fun or pleasurable. To another person, that might be their best, most fun event that they ever had in their life. But although we're not the same in terms of what we find pleasurable, we don't disagree on the pursuit of pleasure. We just find it in different areas, right? So maybe Dennis, we're the same, and we both like, playing video games and going on runs. Or maybe that's just me and you're different. But that doesn't mean that we don't both seek pleasure. We're just seeking it in different ways. And that's immediately obvious if you just ask people, what are you doing this for? You're not doing it to become miserable or upset. You're doing it out of a desire for it to improve your life and to make your life happier. So don't worry too much about specific, precise definitions of happiness. Happiness, fill in the blank. It's whatever makes you happy, Dennis. But you know that you're seeking happiness. And that means that this theory has some, at least, appeal. That's all he's trying to make a point about. Okay, so no disrespect to people who want to go out in an air suit. I mean, I'm sure it is fun for others, but just for me, it would not be so fun. Okay, so now we need to know about objections, okay? What are some different objections to this theory? Just like when we were studying philosophy of religion, we learned about objections to all the different, oh yeah, not to worry, but it's a good sidebar. We've learned about objections to every different argument that we studied so far, and this is no exception. So let's learn what are some objections to utilitarianism. Points of disagreement against the theory. Reasons to find fault with it. Okay. Now I'm going to label the first objection a theory fit for swine, because Mill himself had to contend with this objection in his own life, and that's why he wrote about it in the text that we've been assigned. So one objection is a theory fit for swine. Theory fit for swine. So first of all, the term swine, like what literally is a swine? It's a certain type of creature, I guess you could say. What is it? Just so that we're all clear about that point. The word swine means what? Pig, that's right, yeah, pig, like a farm animal, big hog or whatever. Okay, so here's the objection. Some people heard the theory of Mill, utilitarianism, and they say, you know what, this theory is bad, it's wrong, because in the end, it sounds like it's a theory that's more fit for like a pig than a human being. It's more fit for a farm animal hog than a person like us. What do you think it is about the theory that would lead someone to have that reaction? Like, what is it about pigs and what is it about utilitarianism that someone might say, this isn't for people. This is something that maybe, would be a suitable objective for like a pig, but not for a man, woman, a human being. If do you have any guess possible as to like what could have made a person have this takeaway from the theory? Sounds like it's for swine. Any guess? If you don't have a feeling about that, I'll let you know. Okay, yeah, that's right. Very good, Cordy. Because of the fact that the theory highlights and revolves around pleasure and the seeking out of pleasure, some people might say that's a low aim for something as sophisticated as a human being. So think about pigs, literally out in the farm. They roll around in the mud, they eat, they sleep, they reproduce, but they don't do anything intellectual or lofty beyond that. So someone might have heard the theory which says maximize pleasure and thought, so you're directing me to live the life of a pig? What, I should just roll around in the mud all day and eat and sleep? But that's really low on the scale of what we should be doing as humans, because we're smarter than that. We're better than that. Why is pleasure the correct principle that we should be trying to maximize? It seems like it's an unworthy goal of a smart creature like a human. So don't tell me to live the life of maximized pleasure. That's like the life of a pig, not a human. Okay, well, that's the objection. The objection, again, focuses on a critique of saying that pleasure is a worthy enough goal for an ethical system. But John Stuart Mill has heard this objection, and he had a ready reply. So let me explain to you his response to this. He says this objection misses the mark because there's actually two types of pleasure. Okay? So he distinguishes these two categories, higher pleasures and lower pleasures. So just a little terminology here. The higher pleasures are called higher because these are pleasures that only us intelligent human beings could even experience or enjoy. So pleasures that only humans can enjoy. Okay, so those are the higher pleasures. They're exclusive to mankind, to human beings like us. Lower pleasures, okay, by comparison, are just pleasures that the lower animals can enjoy, like the non-human animals. So pleasures that animals can enjoy. It doesn't take a human to enjoy these. Animals can enjoy the lower pleasures. Humans can too, but we're not limited to them. We can also partake in and enjoy the higher pleasures. So let's just see if anyone can think of a few quick examples. What could you imagine to be higher pleasures? Sources of pleasure, things that are fun and enjoyable, but only humans can enjoy them because basically animals are like too dumb to even understand these things or to even be aware of what they're about. So think of some stuff like that. I mean, you're a human, and imagine what are the things that separate you from the rest of the animals. So, okay, that's a good one. Artwork, either making art or enjoying the contemplation of the art, right? Amusement parks. I mean, it's not, I guess, impossible to bring an animal to an amusement park, but it wouldn't be able to enjoy, the amusement and the rides and the other amenities that it has. Mathematics, very good. So intellectual things like that are very good examples. If you're considering the Pythagorean theorem, or you're like contemplating, the value of pi, or you're just learning the times tables or how to do long division, these are things that, of course, animals can't do. Maybe some of you don't find that pleasurable, but there is a certain kind of pleasure that comes from the mastery of quantitative reasoning. Philosophy, all academic subjects, really. So if you want, you can create a graph on your notes that lists some of these higher and lower pleasures in like a divider, like so, higher, lower, and we've got some good things here. Art, all academic subjects, academic studies. So that could be literature, art, history, science, music, dance, playing a musical instrument. You guys got me? I mean, I see Cordy took up a lot of the slack on this question. You guys, let's remember we're human beings. It's not just eating and sleeping that we can't enjoy. Language, the very fact that we can talk and that we can communicate linguistically. that we can transmit information and content from one person to another. The use of technology of all kinds, right? Telecommunications, finance, social institutions like marriage. All these things are uniquely pleasurable to human beings because animals are of a lower cognitive sophistication and they couldn't possibly enjoy or understand those things. Lower pleasures are things that animals can enjoy. So maybe some of you have ideas about what could constitute those. What are some lower pleasures? So, you know, things that pets or wild animals can enjoy because they don't take any kind of, you know, higher intelligence. Well, shelter, you say shelter, but I mean, animals in the wild don't have shelter. They just roam around. So I don't know if that's exactly always true. But maybe food is certainly one of them. You know, all life forms have to eat to survive, and that's why we're biologically outfitted with a pleasure-reward mechanism. And that's the physiological basis of pleasure that we get from eating. So food is one, sleep. You need sleep in order to recover, recharge, and heal. And so, you know, we see that animals enjoy sleep. Doesn't take an intelligent being for that. Weather, I mean, I'm not sure what you mean, Dennis. Weather can be of any kind. There's hot weather, there's cold weather, there's animals that live in the Arctic, there's animals that live in the desert. So I'm not 100% sure what you mean. But like if you're thinking warmth or something, I would be inclined to agree, but it doesn't extend to every possible animal. So I don't know. How about just activity, you know, just being able to roam around, run, maybe sometimes animal cubs of various species will play with each other. Of course, there's mating and reproduction. You know, the survival of the species depends on the regeneration of those life forms for a new generation. So obviously nature equips us with pleasure reinforcement for doing those things. So now here he comes back to the objection. The objection, the critic said, this is a theory fit for swine. You're telling me to go out and live like a pig because you're saying maximize all the pleasure that I can. And Mill says, no, this is not a theory fit for swine. That's a wrong analysis or interpretation of my theory. Because my theory does say maximize all the pleasure that you possibly can for the greatest number of people. But it doesn't say go out and focus entirely on the lower pleasures. So he says the critic must have misunderstood me and thought that when I said maximize all possible pleasure, that I was only referring to lower pleasures. But instead, there are higher pleasures too. And so Mill says to correctly understand the theory, you should know that you're being told to maximize and promote as many of the pleasures that humans are capable of, especially the higher pleasures. He places greater importance and value on them. So he says, qualitatively, the higher pleasures are better than the lower pleasures are. That's why there's a famous quote from, John Stuart Mill, which is also in the book, which says, it is better to be an unsatisfied human being than a fully satisfied pig. So like imagine a pig living its best life, having all the food, shelter, mud, whatever that it wants, and compare that with a human being that's having a tough time. He's telling you that it's better to be that human being having a tough time in life than a more fully satisfied pig, because the pleasures that a pig can enjoy don't touch the human pleasures that we're capable of enjoying. So no one, he says, would ever trade their human condition, even if it was complicated and sometimes unpleasant, for the more fully satisfied life of a lower animal. Now, I know some of you have pets, or even if you don't, you might have seen an animal at a time in life and thought, wow, that animal has it good. They're just being fed, petted, catered to. That's really nice. I kind of wish that I was my dog instead of me, having to go to school, having to learn things, having to make my way through the world. It's very complex as a human. But when people say that, Mill is claiming that they're not speaking sincerely. That's just facetious. Because if you really traded in your humanity for a more fully satisfied life of a dog or cat or something, you would no longer be able to talk, appreciate music, art, dance, study anything. So he says you'd be impoverished from the standpoint of how many types of pleasures you could enjoy. So he refuses to yield to this objection. The critic says it's all about pleasure, so it's for pigs, not people. And he says, well, human beings, though, can enjoy higher pleasures, which pigs cannot. So the theory's not really telling you to live like a swine. It's telling you to maximize all the pleasures you can, inclusive of the higher ones, which he even thinks are greater in value. Okay, now there are two more quick objections that I wanted to also briefly mention here at the end. And in my opinion, the theory fit for swine objection is not the most damaging to the theory. It's something that Mill, I think, has a decent reply to with the higher and lower pleasure stuff. But here are two other objections that are, I think, more serious and troubling to the theory. One is that it's too demanding. So two more objections. And another possibility of objection is to say that no action is absolutely forbidden in principle. So for me, these are some of the more difficult problems the theory has to deal with, especially this one. I think this is the most significant criticism of utilitarianism. So let me kind of explain this really fast with your help. Okay, so based on what you know right now about utilitarian ethical theory, question, is it always wrong to lie according to this theory? Is it always wrong to lie? If you're, a utilitarian anyway, from the utilitarian standpoint, what's our answer? Yes or no? Is lying always wrong or no? Based on the theory of utilitarianism. I'm not saying you think this, but according to the theory, is it always wrong to lie? Correct, no, it's not always wrong to lie. So in what cases would it actually be the good thing to lie? Well, the theory would say, any scenario where telling the truth would create less happiness than lying would, that's a situation where lying is the right action. And sometimes you might hear that and think, that sounds reasonable, because a little white lie that makes people feel better, you might say, is not necessarily wrong. Like suppose someone made a meal and they worked really hard on it, but you found it so disgusting it almost made you sick. But then they asked you, how did you like the food? And you don't want to tell them the truth, because telling the truth will make them sad. But lying to them and saying it was delicious will make them happy. Now in that case, you might say the utilitarian gives the right answer. I ought to lie, no harm done, people are happy, and no one's hurt by the lie. But how far does it go? I mean, what if a person was cheating in their relationship, and if the partner found out about it, they would be very sad. But if it was never disclosed, then no one's feelings are hurt? Does this mean that you should conceal wrongdoing because the discovery of it is going to make people unhappy? That seems perhaps wrong to many people. And we can go on and on. What about theft? Is theft always wrong according to utilitarianism? Well, again, that depends. It depends on whether the act of theft generates more utility than not stealing. And we can easily imagine like Robin Hood type scenarios where, let's say, a very pricey item is stolen from a wealthy person, but they already have such magnificent wealth that they don't even notice the loss of the item. And then the thief takes the same item, sells it, and uses the money derived from the sale to fund a children's hospital or to give it to cancer research or something. So they're saving lives with the same money that the other person doesn't even notice missing. So does that make it good to steal in this kind of scenario? I mean, we would think perhaps no intuitively, but the theory of utilitarianism has a hard time saying why not. And then even cases of like killing an innocent person, you'd assume, I hope, that that's always wrong fundamentally, no matter what, no matter how much utility it could cause. But I mean, imagine if you could kill one, let's say, a homeless person, take their organs and use the organs to save the lives of 5 other people who need transplants. Now, I hope you would think this is absolutely immoral because it's a total violation of the rights of the one individual. But in utilitarianism, it's hard to say exactly why it's wrong, because if you decline to take the organs, then 5 will die. And if you do so, 1 only will die. So it seems like more total survival, hence more total happiness is generated through the act of murder in this case. But certainly that is wrong. So these are all issues that the theory has difficulties with. And then just very briefly, I know we're at time, but too demanding. The theory is sometimes considered too demanding because it takes no consideration of loyalty or familiarity with people that you may have. It just says maximize utility. So last thing, suppose there were 2 houses both burning down on fire and you're on the scene and you have a limited window of time to maybe kick open the door of one of them and save the occupant. Suppose though in the house on the left, it's a loved one. It's a dear loved one of yours, a best friend or a family member. So you love the person and you have a long-standing relationship with him. In the other house though, just to the right, there's a group of people, but they're anonymous strangers to you. It's like a family, let's say of 10. Now there's 10 against 1. And if you had limited time to act, utilitarianism would advise you that you should go to the greater size group because there's more lives to be saved over there. But don't many of us feel like that would strike deeply against our feelings of loyalty and commitment to the one established relationship? And so utilitarianism sometimes may impose on us too great a burden in living up to its standards. Like robotically going around and just doing the thing that generates most utility might leave little room for you to adhere to the more local commitments and bonds that you've already formed. So it goes. That's utilitarianism. I tried to make it clear what it's about, how it works, and to explain what some of the big 3 objections could be. So I guess that's about it for today. I thank you guys for sticking with it and making it a good conversation. We'll continue on Friday. We're all caught up in our syllabus. So Friday is the day we're starting to talk about Immanuel Kant. And if you found favor with some of these objections, you might like Kant's work a little better ethically, because he does not say that any action is a justified means towards the maximization of total happiness. This is a much different view. So I'll save the discussion for Friday, but okay, are we all good, guys? I'm going to sign off, but just let me see in the chat that you're good to go and there's no leftover questions or comments. We all right? Let me know. Okay, guys, perfect. Well, thanks again. I'll be in touch. Don't forget your first paper is due next Wednesday, so you still have another week to work on it, but let me know if anybody has any questions. I'll be looking at my emails each day. Okay, then, have a great one, and I'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.